You tweeted this yesterday about the departure of Sessions, firing Sessions and replacing him with a man who has repeatedly publicly talked about the ways the Attorney General could shut down the special counsel's case, or as he calls it, the Mueller lynch mob, puts us firmly into constitutional crisis territory. Whitaker must immediately recuse himself. My question is, what if he's here to stay? What if there's absolutely no plan to move him?
Well, then the question becomes, to what extent is he going to try to reduce the Mueller investigation by shutting down the budget, by trying to remove him, by tampering with the evidence? And that's when we need to step in in a very forceful manner. I also think that the special counsel is a very smart man, and he has anticipated all of these actions. I'm certain that the attorneys will go to court, much like they did with the Watergate situation when President Nixon attempted to take all of the documentation and bring it under his control. They will go to the courts to make sure that that documentation, that evidence is held appropriately. So there are steps that can be taken. There's steps that the House Democrats can take to subpoena Special Counsel Mueller if he is in fact removed from office. There is ways that we can make sure there's proper funding. So I'm confident that even though Mr. Whitaker, who is now the acting Attorney General, may in fact be there under unconstitutional grounds, because under Article 2, Section 2, as you pointed out earlier in your show, really requires the advice and consent by the Senate for any principal officer. And he is certainly a principal officer, being defined as someone who is only directly responsible to the president.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.